What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Second video of the day because I would like to extend an apology to all of you because last weekend I released the video where Representative Burlison says that David Grush apparently told him that President Donald Trump was briefed. Then he took it back. He did not say that Grush briefed Trump. He said that he heard from Grush that Trump was briefed. But then he came out today to say that he heard from different sources, not just Grush. And I think that's an important little detail to point out because after he said that, I would guess that David Grush called him and told him to shut up. I'm sorry to tell you, though, that if you go to David Grush's time in the government, and you go to Joe Rogan's interview with Grush, and you hear what he said during the time that he worked there, he did say that he did brief a president. He said the highest you can think of, something like that, something along those lines. I think that he did, honestly, but it could have been Obama. I don't know. You just got to check on the date on which he was working there. Presumably, I think for the NRO, which is the National Reconnaissance Office, I would guess. But out of that Twitter space or UFO X space that was hosted by Diligent Dennison, Burlison said a lot more. He spoke for a while. Actually, the conversation with Burlison starts at around the fourth hour or something like that. And I just gotta show you two clips from him. And I'm gonna also add a little context to the first clip that I will show you, where Dr. Anna Brady Estevez was recently on the Good Trouble show with Matt Ford. And she talks about a rumor that we've heard forever, but I had never seen someone who was actually at the National Science Foundation saying this. And the rumor is that a lot of the reverse engineered technology eventually became the tech that we use today in many ways. There's some technology that we have that is really, really advanced. And it's kind of weird that it just like emerged like that. Technologically, we've accelerated quite dramatically over the last 20 or 30 years. I don't know if you guys agree, but I would say so, right? So based on that, I'm going to play the first clip from Eric Burlison, which is really revealing because you got to understand, he's in a position of power as a congressman. And every single person within the UFO community that is trying to talk to her or talks to him, they all have different ideas and different outlooks of what's going on. Burleson speaks to everybody. He's spoken to Eric Davis, David Grush, Dr. Hal Puthoff. He's spoken to Dr. Stephen Greer. He speaks constantly with Timothy Alberino, and they all have different ideas of what's going on. And I would guess that because he's recently said that he wants to remain skeptical, because I would guess that he's being bombarded with different narratives all the time. And I understand that maybe he gets a little overwhelmed sometimes. And the recent media appearances that he's been doing do describe a man that is a little bit on edge, maybe, or that maybe some of the things that he's being told, he's having a hard time dealing with. That's just an observation. I'm not saying that's happening, but it does kind of feel that way. However, I hadn't heard the entire Twitter space. And these two clips that I just saw are really interesting, in my opinion. And I think that they describe a little bit better what he's observing and the interpretation that he has of everything that's being told to him. And watch how he remains skeptical. I think this is good from him. So yeah, I'm going to play you. Shout out to Joe Murgia, who reposted this one. So here it is. Representative Burlison speaking about what seems to be going on behind the scenes in UFO world on a next space.
But I feel like at some point I'll be able to ascertain some truth, given that, you know what I'm saying? Like if you know somebody's lying to you, sometimes you can figure out what they're saying, what of what they're saying might be true. And And so at the end of the day, like, it is pretty interesting to me that they all hate each other. Now,
So when he says that they all hate each other, I think that he's talking about the different factions within the UFO community that are pushing different narratives. And there's so many, like they are pushing their own narrative, each person. And many of them have a lot of followers and have a lot of influence. And I just want to say, I don't really think we fully know what's going on. And I think that many of the people that talk to Burlison, they think they know exactly what's going on. I just want to know what makes them think that way. That is kind of weird to do that, because it becomes really difficult unless you are privy to classified information that changes things, or you've had some really weird anomalous experiences that have you convinced that that's what's going on, you know? But again, and in my previous video, I spoke about Chris Bledsoe, that I think that he's interpreting what's happening to him based on his beliefs. I think this is happening with a lot of people, if not most, I think. So, yeah, there is friction and quite a lot within the community, within all the so-called UFO bigwigs. But as far as who has the truth, I don't know. I don't think anybody does, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
generally speaking, they what I did find in common is they all have a high level of respect for David Grush. That's like universal, which is why I felt comfortable bringing him into my team.
This is quite an interesting comment from Burlison. And yeah, it's actually true. Dr. Stephen Greer never speaks ill of David Grush. None of the people who are like fully against Greer at the top speak ill of David Grush. Only, I guess, skeptics and debunkers sometimes speak about him like that. But within the people that are allegedly or supposedly trying to find the truth, but injecting their own narrative too, he's well respected. I wonder why.
My team. And he's very gracious to do it. Like he can make a ton of money outside, and he's taking peanuts to work for me. But they all have that high level of respect for him. When I sat down with Lou and Christopher Mellon and Eric Davis in my office, they very much warned me, do not go near the what they called, I can't remember if it was the green projects or the blue projects, basically official US government advanced technology special access programs. Because they said if you do, you will get significant pushback, and it would be really bad. And so
Burleson is essentially alluding to threats and even possibly worse. That's concerning, but we've heard about this for decades. And there are many cases of people within the community or within science, edge science, who pass away under mysterious circumstances, or they're harassed, they're attacked. There's a lot of that going on. There's been a lot of that going on for decades now.
so to me, what that says, when I'm hearing that, and then at the same time they're talking about all this crazy like UFO stuff, like that there's 4 types of aliens, that we have people with psionic ability that are able to pull these things out of the out of the ether.
Yeah, so the way he emphasized the word crazy tells me that he still doesn't believe any of that. And I guess it's the right approach, I think, because yeah, a lot of this stuff does sound really wild, and it is hard to digest sometimes. And I guess it depends on your own beliefs, because there will always be something that, even though it sounds really wild, you go, yeah, that makes sense, based on your experiences.
And I mean, like, just stuff that's like out there, right? Like men staring at goats kind of stuff.
That reference is from a film that, if you guys don't know, it's based on, I believe it's General Stubblebine, and I think that Colonel John Alexander may have also been portrayed in that film. It's the movie where George Clooney and Ewan McGregor allegedly use psionic abilities, because that is what that is. And there's also Kevin Spacey in the film. It's a really good film, actually, and it's supposed to loosely be based on real life events. They just didn't use the names of the real life people that did this in the government.
And so I'm listening to this, but what I do think is like, okay, there clearly is something the United States government is working on. That, to me, that's the one thing that I took from that conversation that I know must be true, is that there's something extremely important that we are working on that is highly, highly advanced. And the question is, so to me, one of the questions is, what they explain is that we derived that advanced technology from ancient crafts.
Reverse engineer.
Man, did you hear what he said? Ancient craft. That's wild, because that seems to be one of the most obscure rabbit holes, I would say. There seems to be this push against people who try to talk about the ancient stuff. And it's not just ancient technology as is, it's also about anything that has to do with revealing stuff about, for example, the pyramids, ancient civilizations. You guys already know the push that the Nazca tridactyls get. And according to the data that Gonzalo put in the tridactyls.org website, that's raw data from studies that were made, scientific studies. And the large bodies do seem to be real. And these mummies get a lot of push. So there's also the other avenue. When he said ancient technology, we need to learn what that is exactly, whether it's artifacts or some kind of new understanding of physics, some kind of new understanding of time, understanding our consciousness, how it works with the environment, because it does. We actively, every single one of us together, are creating our reality as it is right now. Look at how it is right now. So it's a shit show up here, I'm saying. And we don't fully understand that. And I think that may also be linked to ancient technology, because that's what everybody seems to think, that consciousness is definitely a part of this conversation and a fundamental part. So I would dig into whatever ancient technology you think is and try to understand it. I'm trying. Whenever I get something meaningful to share with you, I will. But for now, I'm just like exploring different avenues, because it's not easy to understand, especially when you're talking about physics. I'm not a physicist, and some people use language that I need to learn better, So yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting comments from Eric Burlison.
Engineered.
Yeah, we reverse engineered it. That's what they claim. That what you're seeing, the advanced and then when you talk to Stephen Greer, he says the same thing. He says that like the B2 even has like reverse engineered technology in the B2, that in a ton of things that we have today, whether it's fiber optics or like quantum computing, all of that was reverse engineered from these alien craft. Yeah, I don't know. Man.
You see how he changed from ancient to alien? And then when he said ancient, this guy kind of interrupted him. That is a pattern that always appears on when you're trying to talk about this. I see that Bob Grenier is trying to explore this, and I've seen a bunch of his presentations, and there's always something that interrupts it. The other day, I also saw a video where Richard Dolan is talking to Chris Ramsey from Area 52. And Dolan was talking about an encounter, or an alleged encounter, that a colonel had in Vegas with two Nordic aliens, as he thinks they were. And I think that this is Colonel John Alexander that told him this to Rich Dolan. And he talks about a moment when they're like trying to plan how to figure this out. what these beings are. And when they're doing the planning, they hear noise as if construction was happening in the background. And this just happened when Burleson said ancient technology. I just wanted to point that out. It's kind of weird. And what Burleson said here about the technology also being in the environment already, and we're already using some of it, does tie into Anna Brady Estevez and her interview with Matt Ford at the Good Trouble Show. And I just got to show you. So listen to this. This is Anna Brady Estevez yesterday with Matt Ford. There's a lot that she said that was really interesting, and I would recommend you guys go watch that because she's very involved in a lot of this. And I think that she may be trying to help out parts of the government that want to get this out, and she's really connected to do so. I really do think that based on what I've heard from her, that's what's happening. So whenever she speaks, I listened, and this is what she said about this technology.
One of the briefings that was, so we're looking to listen to always to entrepreneurs and researchers and to help bring those resources to them. And, sometimes this feels very, maybe there's going to be something here wishy-washy. So something that, I'll share that I'm not primary, on having seen, this was many, many decades ago, the technology development, but something that I was both exposed to in my personal capacity, and then that I also brought into the government and government briefings as if people say, well, this UAP technology, someday it's going to be worth something, right? Someday we're going to get something big out of it. Well, what does that even mean? Well, I had somebody share with me who was in these programs that there were many things that have already come out of these UAP programs, and so that includes lasers and includes semiconductors. And many people are going to get very upset and they're going to say, no, that was Bell Labs and this and that. Well, the in-depth story on that was that when fields of science would reach a certain level, what's been shared with me is that there are programs that would say, hey, look at this, which is 10 times higher performing. Wow. And they would say, this came out of a Russian sub. So I wasn't there, as primary to say, did that happen? Did that not happen? People will say, well, some of this, it started, closer to the turn of the century, or we had this then. The anomalous phenomena, as you say, Jacques Vallée has documented, this goes back historic.
That's a wild claim. And I don't know who spoke to her, but it kind of sounds like Tim Taylor. Because if somebody knows this to be true, that believes this is true and has access to this level of information, it would be somebody like him. Because if you guys don't know who Tim Taylor is, he is Tyler from the book American Cosmic, written by Diana Pasulka. And he also appears on Chris Bledsoe's UFO of God book. Tim Taylor goes through a really interesting process in Diana Pasulka's book, and he eventually becomes very religious, although he became a Catholic. And I'm not sure if what I'm going to show you now, which is another clip from Eric Burlison in that space, talking about someone that David Grush introduced him to, it does kind of sound like the story of Tyler from American Cosmic, or Tim Taylor from Diana Pasulka's book. And I just got to show you because I think this was really interesting as well. It's pretty wild how many claims Burleson made in this space. I had no idea. I've been doing other stuff. Here is Eric Burleson, and tell me if I'm wrong. I think this might be Tim Taylor. And also shout out to Joe Murgia, because I saw that from him and it does sound like Tim Taylor, actually. Here it is.
So I'm a Christian. I believe that there's so much truth in the Bible. In fact, so I'll tell you guys something that I have. David Grush put me in contact with an individual who blew my mind. I don't know if I can believe him, but it's an individual who has aliens talk to him. And this individual went from being a Jewish person to being an atheist in his life, when he started talking to what he calls his aliens, or angels, they started talking to him. He has these strange experiences, and then his wife will transcribe what he says, and a lot of it is predictions that come true. And what he told me is he became a Christian. He started believing in Jesus because these things that were talking to him said, yes, Jesus is real. Jesus, I mean, was a real person. He really did perform these miracles, and this guy, and he was the Messiah, and he is part of the
Whoa.
divine council with God. And then a guy who didn't even know what the divine council was, the Bible, suddenly was being told through. So anyway, that was an interesting thing.
Wait, no. Now I'm changing my mind, Joe. Kind of sounds like Chris Bledsoe too, so I don't know who it is. Because we know that Chris Bledsoe talks about the lady and the prophetic stuff that the lady tells him, unless Tim Taylor also has that, which I was not aware. I guess we have to remain open minded about any possibility there is. You guys need to understand I am not religious, but I was raised in a Catholic household, and my entire family are Catholics. And well, I'm from Mexico. The majority of people grow up Catholic here. And so whenever I see UFO researchers and people from the UFO community saying really nasty, disrespectful things about people's beliefs in something else, I get really put off by that because, well, even though I don't believe it, I don't believe practically any of it. I am agnostic, though, I would say, but I think it's more important than believe or not believe. It's more important to learn how to treat people with respect, I guess. If you don't believe what they say or claim or what they believe, that's fine. But I've seen so much vitriol against people just because of their beliefs. It's really disappointing. And I just wanted to say that. No, I don't think, because of my own bias, that those are angels or that the Bible is true, or but I don't have to go out on a limb and just insult people because of that. Just wanted to say that. So let me know if you think this was Tim Taylor or it was Chris Bledsoe. I don't know which is which, but it is very curious what's happening within the UFO community. A part of it, it's always like very focused on the capitalist kind of stuff and trying to find out whether the US government is hiding some kind of technology, whether ancient or alien. I don't know. Maybe it's both. And then there's this other side within the UFO community of people like in high places of it that seem to think we're dealing with angels and that this is religious and that history of religion has a lot of truth to it. I don't know what to think, but yeah, we got to remain open minded. And if we can, not be abrasive. And if you don't believe in something anybody else is telling you, just don't attack them. There's no need for that, I don't think. I think we need to talk to each other instead of putting each other down. Why don't you try to understand why the other person thinks that way instead of saying, no, you're stupid, that's wrong? It just makes no sense to me. I don't know. As far as like trying to find out what's going on, I would say that communicating with each other is better than just calling each other out and insulting each other. But that's just me. Let me know what you think about Burlison's statements, about what he thinks is going on, about the claims that were made to him, about Dr. Brady Estevez claims about this technology being derived from aliens. And apparently they're telling these companies that it came from a Russian submarine, or they use another excuse to hide the fact that it was derived from this tech, allegedly, because that's a claim. That's a wild claim. And tell me what you think about this description of this man that gets prophetic dreams and talks to angels. Sorry, I just don't believe in that. Does that sound like Tim Taylor or like Joe Murgia says, or does that sound like Chris Bledsoe? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to support us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in any other way, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can support us through KGRA. You can become a member. And we are already on every single podcast platform. All the Psicoactivo interviews are there, thanks to KGRA. So thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. And remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Dr. Anna Brady Estevez. Always. Bye.